Before the American West had courts, before it had stable towns, before it had rules anyone respected, there was a time when survival depended entirely on who was willing to stand in front of chaos and refuse to step aside. And in that time, long before legends were written, the Texas Rangers were born not as heroes but as a desperate solution to a problem no one else knew how to solve. The frontier of Texas was not wild because it wanted to be. It was wild because nothing strong enough had arrived to tame it. Settlers were scattered across vast land with no protection. Bandits, raiders, and outlaw groups moved freely, knowing there was no authority capable of stopping them. Violence was not shocking. It was routine. Families disappeared. Ranches burned. Justice, when it came at all, came late and weak. The Rangers were not created by tradition or ceremony. They were created by necessity. Men were recruited not because they were polished, but because they were reliable under pressure. There were no uniforms, no guarantees, no glory. Only a mission: ride into places where the law did not exist and become it. These were not men chasing fame. They were men who understood that if someone did not draw the line, everything would collapse. Early Rangers lived on the edge of exhaustion. They traveled light, slept poorly, and trusted almost no one. Every town they entered could be hostile. Every stranger could be an informant. They learned quickly that hesitation was deadly, but recklessness was worse. Rangers survived not by being the fastest, but by being relentless. They tracked criminals for weeks across brutal terrain, following signs most men would miss, enduring heat, hunger, and isolation until resistance broke. What separated the Rangers from outlaws was not violence. Both used it. The difference was purpose. Rangers used force to end chaos, not to profit from it. They were accountable to something larger than themselves, even when that accountability was poorly defined. In a land without structure, they became structure through discipline, coordination, and an unspoken code that demanded loyalty above comfort. The psychological toll was enormous. Rangers watched friends die. They made decisions that haunted them for life. They enforced justice in places where no one thanked them for it. And yet, they kept riding, because they understood something fundamental about the frontier. If chaos is allowed to grow, it never stops on its own. As Texas expanded, so did the Rangers' role. They fought bandits, smugglers, and organized criminal networks that threatened entire regions. They were feared, respected, and sometimes hated. Their methods were harsh, shaped by the brutality of the environment they operated in. The West did not allow softness. It punished it. And through all of it, the Rangers developed a reputation that traveled faster than they did. When word spread that Rangers were coming, some criminals fled. Others prepared for war. Either way, order followed in their wake. Not because the Rangers were perfect, but because they were persistent. This was the beginning of an institution forged in blood, fatigue, and uncelebrated sacrifice. Long before Texas became a symbol of strength, these men were standing alone between civilization and collapse, knowing full well that history might never remember their names. There would have been nothing left to remember. As the Texas Rangers pushed deeper into lawless territory, the frontier began to reveal its true nature, not as a place of opportunity, but as a constant test of endurance. These men were not riding into danger for adventure. They were riding because if they did not, entire regions would fall into permanent chaos. Every mission carried the same unspoken understanding. There would be no backup, no safe retreat, and no guarantee that anyone would even know what happened if they never returned. The Rangers operated in small numbers, often outnumbered, navigating land that punished mistakes instantly. Deserts scorched the body. Rivers swallowed horses whole. Nights froze bone deep. They learned to read tracks the way scholars read books, to measure time by shadows, and to sleep with one eye open. Survival depended not on individual bravery, but on cohesion. A ranger who acted alone endangered everyone. Discipline was not optional. It was survival. Violence was constant but never casual. Every confrontation was calculated. The Rangers understood that a reckless gunfight might win a moment but lose a campaign. They relied on patience, ambush, and psychological pressure. Criminal groups learned quickly that once Rangers picked up a trail, it did not end until someone was captured, killed, or driven completely out of the region. The Rangers did not chase forever. They closed in relentlessly. Yet their methods drew criticism even in their own time. Some saw them as too harsh, too final, too willing to operate in the gray areas of justice. But the frontier itself existed in gray. Laws written hundreds of miles away meant little where survival was decided in seconds. The Rangers filled a vacuum that polite solutions could not reach. They became the last line when everything else failed. If this story is pulling you in, take a moment now. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below whether you believe order on the frontier could have existed without men willing to walk into danger without guarantees. As their reputation spread, the Rangers became more than enforcers. They became a deterrent. Entire outlaw networks dissolved at the rumor of their arrival. Towns stabilized not because violence vanished, but because chaos lost its freedom to expand unchecked. Slowly, painfully, the frontier began to change. But that change came at a cost. Rangers carried trauma that had no place to go. They returned from long campaigns hardened, silent, and distant. There were no medals, no public celebrations, just another ride into uncertainty. Many struggled to reintegrate into normal life. Some never did. The frontier demanded everything and gave back very little. As Texas moved toward statehood and growth accelerated, the Rangers' role evolved. They were called upon not just to fight criminals, but to protect infrastructure, enforce borders, and suppress threats that could destabilize the entire region. With each expansion of responsibility, the line between law and survival grew thinner. The Rangers were no longer just reacting to chaos, they were shaping the future of Texas itself. Power, however, always invites scrutiny and resistance. As the Texas Rangers grew in effectiveness, something inevitable happened. Fear changed sides. What had once been a frontier dominated by outlaws and raiders began to feel pressure from a force that did not retreat, did not negotiate easily, and did not forget. Criminal networks adapted, becoming more organized, more violent, and more ruthless. The Rangers, in turn, adapted as well, sharpening their methods and hardening their resolve. This cycle of escalation defined the most dangerous period of their history. With success came visibility, and with visibility came criticism. Newspapers began to question Ranger tactics. Politicians, safely distant from the frontier, debated morality from offices far removed from blood and dust. Some accused the Rangers of excessive force. Others argued that their actions blurred the line between law and vengeance. The Rangers themselves understood the irony. They were being judged by standards that did not exist in the places they were sent to protect. Operating in remote regions meant making decisions without guidance or oversight. Rangers often acted as judge, jury, and executioner, not because they desired power, but because delay meant death. Capturing criminals alive was ideal, but rarely possible. Outlaws knew surrender often led to execution anyway, and so they fought to the end. Every encounter carried the weight of finality. This reality shaped the Rangers into men who thought less about reputation and more about outcomes. The psychological toll intensified. Rangers carried guilt alongside pride. They enforced order knowing that history might condemn them for the methods that saved communities. Many became emotionally distant, unable to fully return to civilian life between campaigns. Families suffered, marriages strained. Silence became a coping mechanism. The Ranger Code valued resilience, not confession. Yet despite the cost, they continued. Because they had seen what happened when order failed. They had walked through towns abandoned to fear. They had buried victims whose names would never appear in newspapers. And that memory fueled them more than praise ever could. As Texas stabilized, the Rangers faced a new threat: irrelevance. The frontier was shrinking. Railroads connected towns. Courts expanded their reach. The same progress the Rangers had fought to protect now questioned the need for their existence. Some politicians saw them as relics of a violent past. Others wanted to disband them entirely. But crime did not vanish with civilization. It evolved. Smuggling, organized gangs, and cross-border threats replaced lone outlaws. The Rangers adapted again, shifting from raw frontier enforcement to investigative and strategic operations. They proved that their greatest strength was not brutality but flexibility. Still, the debate never fully ended. Were the Rangers heroes or instruments of oppression, protectors or remnants of a harsher age? The truth, as always, lived somewhere in between. They were shaped by the environment they served, and that environment demanded decisions few were willing to make. By the early 20th century, the Rangers had secured a permanent place in Texas history, not as flawless icons, but as a force forged in necessity. They had done what was required when nothing else existed, and whether praised or criticized, their impact was undeniable. As the West did not become stable by accident. It became stable because someone was willing to absorb the cost of enforcing order, and the Rangers had paid that cost in full. When the dust finally began to settle across Texas, the transformation was so gradual that many people failed to notice what had truly happened. Towns stabilized, trade expanded, families planted roots where only fear had existed before, courts functioned, roads connected distant places. And in the background of all of it stood a force that had absorbed the worst years so that others could inherit calmer ones. The Texas Rangers did not end chaos with a single victory. They wore it down, mile by mile, by decision, often without applause, often without thanks. History prefers clean endings, but the Rangers' story never had one. There was no final battle where order triumphed forever. Instead, there was continuity. As Texas modernized, the Rangers evolved with it, shedding some methods, refining others, and learning that enforcement in a growing nation required restraint as much as resolve. They transitioned from frontier riders to investigators, from survival-driven enforcers to professionals operating within expanding legal frameworks. The same men who once rode alone across lawless territory now worked within institutions they helped make possible. This evolution did not erase controversy. It never could. The Rangers' past remained heavy, filled with moments that challenged modern sensibilities. But to judge those moments without understanding the world that produced them is to misunderstand the frontier entirely. The West was not a laboratory of ethics, it was a crucible of survival. And in that crucible, hesitation cost lives. What the Rangers represent is not perfection. It is responsibility under pressure. They accepted roles others refused. They stepped into spaces where failure meant collapse. They enforced order knowing they would be criticized for how they did it, even as the results benefited those same critics. That paradox sits at the heart of American expansion. Progress demanded hard choices long before it allowed comfortable judgment. As generations passed, the image of the Ranger hardened into legend. Boots, badges, wide horizons, but beneath the iconography lies a quieter truth. The Rangers succeeded not because they were feared alone, but because they endured, they learned, they adapted. They carried institutional memory forward instead of clinging to outdated methods. In doing so, they proved that strength is not the refusal to change, but the ability to change without losing purpose. Today, when people speak of Texas as a symbol of resilience and independence, they are speaking in echoes of what the Rangers enforced when the stakes were highest. They were the line that held when the law was still an idea and not a guarantee. They paid for that with isolation, trauma, and lives spent in constant vigilance. And when the nation finally caught up to them, they stepped back without demanding credit. That is their final lesson. Order is not built by spectacle. Security is not created by slogans. Stability comes from people willing to do the work long after the excitement fades. If this story gave you a deeper understanding of how the American West truly became what it is, take a moment now. Leave a like to support honest history. Subscribe to the channel for long-form stories that respect complexity instead of myth. And comment below. Do you believe the Texas Rangers were a necessary force of their time? Or should history judge them by modern standards? Because the hardest truth about building a nation is this: someone always has to hold the line first. And long before there was peace to protect, the Texas Rangers were already there.